Today, we're going to talk about a lost city, a forgotten empire, and a very modern crisis that, believe it or not, brought it all bubbling back to the surface. This is the incredible story of Zakhiku.
So, let me ask you this. What happens when a global crisis, something that affects millions of us right now, smashes head-on into the distant past? Well, sometimes you get something amazing. You get the story of a 3,400-year-old city that literally just reappeared from the bottom of a river.
Okay, so how on earth does an entire city just emerge from the water? Well, the whole story starts with what you could call a ghost, rising from the Tigris River.
All right, so here's the backstory. Back in the 1980s, the Mosul Dam was built in Iraq. When they built it, this entire valley was flooded, and an ancient city was submerged along with it, with no real archaeological study beforehand. For decades, it was just gone. But then, fast forward to today. Extreme drought, a major consequence of climate change, forced Iraq to draw huge amounts of water from that very reservoir. And as the water levels dropped, something incredible happened. The lost Bronze Age city of Zakhiku broke the surface once again.
The second that city reappeared, a clock started ticking. Archaeologists knew they had this tiny, fleeting window of opportunity to uncover its secrets before it disappeared all over again.
Seriously, they had no idea how long they had. Days? Weeks? So a joint German and Kurdish team of archaeologists had to scramble. They launched this frantic emergency mission to map, document, and dig up absolutely everything they could before the river took it back.
And just to give you a sense of how intense this was no walk in the park. One of the archaeologists, Ivana Pulgis, said they were dealing with freezing temperatures, snow, hail, you name it. They were literally in a race against the river, battling the elements to save a piece of history.
So what did they find in that mad dash against time? It was so much more than just a pile of ruins. What they uncovered was a snapshot of a major, thriving ancient city. As they started mapping, the scale of the place just became clear. They found a huge palace, massive defensive walls with towers, a giant multi-story warehouse for storing goods, and even an industrial complex. I mean, this was no small village. This was a bustling urban hub. But here's the thing that's just mind-blowing. The city was built with sun-dried mud bricks. Now, common sense tells you that if you leave mud bricks underwater for 40 years, you should come back to, well, mud. They should have just dissolved into nothing. Instead, the archaeologists were stunned to find walls still standing, some of them several meters high, in shockingly good condition.
So how did it survive? This is my favorite part. It's this fantastic, beautiful paradox. The very disaster that destroyed the city is also what saved it. See, around 1350 BC, a massive earthquake hit, and it toppled the upper parts of the walls. All that rubble fell down, and it created this protective blanket over the lower floors, shielding them from the elements and eventually the water for thousands of years. Incredible.
Now, the reason this discovery is so incredibly important is because Zakhiku was a major city of the Mittani Empire, and they are one of the great lost powers of the ancient world.
For a couple of centuries, the Mittani were a superpower. They ruled this huge territory. But here's the catch. They're a massive mystery to us. Almost everything we know about them comes from what their rivals, like the Egyptians, wrote about them. We've never found their capital city, Washukani. We don't have their state archives. So finding a city like Zakhiku, a place where they told their own story, is an absolute game changer for history.
And inside those ruins, the team hit the archaeological jackpot. They found written records, not just a few, over 100 of them.
Tucked away, almost like a time capsule, inside 5 ceramic jars, they found an archive of cuneiform tablets. You know, those clay documents with the cool wedge-shaped writing. And what's really interesting is that they date to the period right after the big earthquake, when the Assyrians had taken over. So it's this perfect snapshot of the exact moment a new power was moving in.
And again, the preservation is it's almost unbelievable. As archaeologist Peter Fautzner said, it's basically a miracle that these tablets, which are made of unfired clay, survived decades underwater. They should have turned right back into mud.
So, with all these pieces of the puzzle, the grand buildings, the earthquake, those priceless tablets, we can finally start to put together the life and the death of Zakhiku.
Think about it. This city had a life that spanned about 600 years. It started around 1800 BC as a key trading post. It hit its golden age under the Mittani, and then, bam, it was devastated by that earthquake. The up-and-coming Assyrian Empire moved in for a bit before making a very calculated decision to just leave. And then there was silence for over 3,000 years until the Mosul Dam put it underwater.
So why would the Assyrians just walk away after resettling it? It really boils down to a huge business decision. See, Zakhiku was perfect for the Mittani, whose whole economy was based on river trade. But the Assyrians, they had a different business model. They were a land-based empire focused on agriculture, on generating profit to feed their armies. So they moved their regional capital to a new city, Mardaman, which was surrounded by massive, fertile plains. Zakhiku was simply obsolete for their goals. It's a fascinating sign of a huge economic shift in the Bronze Age.
And then, after that frantic excavation, the waters of the Tigris rose again. Zakhiku is now back in its watery grave, leaving us with its incredible story and a lot of lingering questions.
I mean, the story of Zakhiku really is a perfect loop. A natural disaster preserved it, and a modern, man-made crisis revealed it. It is a true time capsule, giving us a look into a lost world we never thought we'd see.
But you know, the work is far from over. As experts start translating those 100-plus tablets, what are they going to find? What secrets are hidden in there about the collapse of the Mittani? What can they tell us about the everyday people who live there? And of course, the biggest question of all, when will the next drought bring it back to the surface?
The story of Zakhiku it's a stunning paradox. The same forces of climate change that threaten our modern world are also, in some ways, peeling back the layers of the deep past. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? As our world continues to change, what other lost worlds are just waiting to be revealed?